You're listening to the Veterinary Innovation Podcast.
You're listening to the Veterinary Innovation Podcast. My name is Shawn Wilkie, and along with my awesome co-host, we interview the innovators in this space every week. I'm super excited about this episode. I think we've fucked it up once in the past, Ivan. I think we might have. But why don't you go ahead and get us started today?
So I'm super excited to introduce a friend of mine, a colleague, Dr. Joel Parker. So the reason why Shawn talks about his error in the past is because we didn't record the first episode with Joel, and it was super engaging. It was dynamic. It was awesome. And at the end, we were like, shit. So super excited. This is a sequel. You guys will never find out what was during the first one, but this will be exciting. Dr. Joel Parker is a president of Veterinary Practice Solutions. He's a DVM, EBITDA decoder. I love that. Speaker, vlogger, Whiteboard Wednesdays. If you guys didn't check it out on YouTube, you can find Whiteboard Wednesdays. It's pretty awesome. He's an author. He was a co-founder and president of Professional Business Solutions, consultant at Measurable Solutions, VP Business Development of 40 Software. He's a founder and CEO of Canaan Equipment, and he owned and ran veterinary hospital that was AHA accredited, and he loves Porsches. I know that too. Joel, what a delight. Welcome to the show.
Thanks so much for having me back. I thought that seeing as you guys, ditched the recording last time that I'd said something wrong or something like that. So, but if I recall, it was a hilarious, fun time. So we'll see if we can, like you say, bring back the second session, right?
Come on, you can't say anything wrong. We have Shawn every show here, so you can't do worse than he does. So I wanted to talk about your gig and what you've been doing very well for the past, I don't know how many years you've been doing this. So you're right now an educator, and you're teaching this sort of an executive MBA style program to the veterinary practices where you talk to them about EBITDA improvement, about how to run the operations, the workflow optimizations, all the aspects of improving your hospital efficacy, efficiency, and revenue with EBITDA. How is that now with two angles? One, most popular, COVID. Two, with the consolidation as we're going through it.
So let's address the last question first, like the consolidation that's going on out there, that's been going on for what now, 20 years? Like when was the first VCA?
I'd say a bit over 25. Well, not VCA, it's probably Banfield we were talking
It's
about
probably
here.
Banfield, right? Yeah. Well, I know the gentleman that started the first, maybe there was Pet Smarts and he started Vet Smarts. I forget his name, Scott somebody, another, did the same executive training program that I did. He just launched out there, and that eventually morphed into Banfield. So we're talking, I did my training early 1990s. So gosh, sometime shortly after that. But, basically what our program's been able to do is to help practices morph from an owner dependent practice into an owner independent practice that affords them what I call a time profit and financial profit. And if we can build a practice, if we can take a practice from that struggling single doctor practice, which half of the overwhelm the single practitioner experiences is from staffing and all the stresses of owning a business. If we can move them beyond that into 2.5 and on up practice, then the owner can get some relief, and then they start to get really attractive to consolidators. And so, as I was mentioned earlier to you guys, our biggest thing that we can do is guide a person through that with some proven technologies. Our biggest loss of clients is what I call the corporate euthanasia or the consolidation euthanasia. Yeah, where the owner sells to a consolidator and then we lose our entrepreneur. And because of that, one of the fields that I'm really excited and I am personally kind of spearheading and super interested in, and that's the young entrepreneur that's a couple of years out of school. And like I did, maybe you did, Ivan, you don't like where you are. And so rather than jump from a C or D level, frying pan practice into another one, you're going to jump up and create an A-level practice. And that's how I ended up getting into owning my own practice and the whole veterinarial thing that's out there, as a veterinarian, being an entrepreneur. So what I'm super excited about is this new generation of young practice associates that have worked at Banfield, some of the larger ones, that then go, hey, I got to go out on my own. And that's who we love working with. And we're getting more and more of them all the time. And they're super cool. They're super fun. They're not all burnt out. And many of them have got, ideas of, 10 practices in 10 years. They're not small thinkers. A lot of the business-minded generation of the young doctors these days, a good slice of them can be very, very business minded. And then there's another big slice that just wants to go work in corporate and, go home at 6 o'clock. So in terms of that corporate consolidation and that whole movement that's out there, think of us as, a coach that would come into a struggling football team and, start to manage it and train it and take it to the Super Bowl. And then we go from there. Now, first question to do with COVID-19, this is where you go, well, wow, what a big change in operating basis just overnight. And we've been able to survive that remarkably well. And what's amazing is our clients have survived it remarkably well. And I don't just mean being busy, because it seems like every practice out there is swamping busy these days. We're seeing anywhere from 4 to 10x the phone calls coming on the front desk. Everybody stayed home. They went to the pound. They went to the shelters. They bought a pet. And now what are they doing? They're calling the veterinarian. So there's been this overwhelming amount of, phone calls coming to the front desk, and staff are all stressed out. With our guys, with their VPSers, that are doing our program, they're not stressed out. And the reason why they're not stressed out is that they're way more efficient than a standard practice. They don't have the regular amount of inefficiencies and screw-ups and mistakes that a disorganized practice would have. So bring COVID on, they can handle the increase in volume. Efficiency is a little bit like static on a bad radio. It doesn't get any better when you turn up the volume. And that's been our whole approach working with our guys getting through COVID, is that, hey, focus on your efficiency, focus on your organization, focuses on you're hiring the right people and training them, and people are coming through great. They're doing super, super well.
Joel, it's really, really great to have you here. Sorry that Ivan didn't record the first episode.
Don't worry about it. When was that? That was like 10 years ago, wasn't it?
I think you were one of the very first episodes. So it was great that you were able to come back and be with us. Actually, I think it's really interesting and kind of funny. I think you get the credit for actually introducing me and Ivan together, or the blame, I guess, depending on which way we look at it.
All right. I found the person, Joel. We have to talk.
We're going to talk. Exactly.
So, Joel, I wanted to kind of get you to help our listeners imagine to the type of people that come through your, I guess, door, that come into your training programs, what they look like, what the overwhelming majority looks like when they enter, and what they look like maybe 6 months, a year after, and describe that journey so people that are listening to this podcast may be able to self-identify and just help them understand what it would be like to work with your organization and, just kind of help us understand that.
I think they come in like I came in to my program, Shawn and Ivan, really stressed out. They come in usually, probably the typical owner is anywhere from 2 to 10 years out, right? It seems like if they've been 40 years out, they're running out of time, and they've kind of, it's kind of like turning the lights down in a room with a dimmer switch. Pretty soon it seems normal, right? And, your eyes adjust. It seems like the longer people go on in practice without getting some help, the more they kind of just accept it. But typically people are coming in after 2 years of ownership, like I was 3 years out, 3 years of ownership, pretty burnt out, pretty kind of looking at them, having that talk in the mirror saying, I'm not doing this for another 20 years. This is way too stressful. There's not enough money. What do I do? So they'll typically come in like that. I don't know, all ages, all the way from early 30s to even some early 60s, but that's more rare. Usually it's kind of early 30s. And one of the approaches I take in terms of helping people understand what we do is that I take the approach like I'd say for you, Shawn, and you, Ivan, like we're all smart guys here, right? We all went to university. We're super smart. We run these companies. We've got high IQs. We were trained extremely well as veterinarians to observe data and make an assessment and create a treatment plan and do it. So that's good to that. That's because we're trained. And we're smart enough now to fly an airplane, right? We all are. We're all smart enough to fly an airplane. But if we don't get some training, the chances are we're either not going to get off the ground. Hopefully, we don't get off the ground. But if we get off the ground, there's a big chance we'll crash it. And it's not because we're not smart. It's because we're untrained. One of the biggest areas I'll run into with some veterinarians is that we're used to being the MacGyver of the healthcare industry, that we just kind of, make things go right and we're survivors. And sometimes with people like that, it's very difficult to say, hey, you could do so much better, but you're going to need to get trained. You're going to need to go to flight school and figure out how to do this. And that's probably who arrives on our doorstep, is people that said, listen, I'm not seeing my kids. There's not enough money, there's not enough time, some combination of both. And there's got to be a better way of doing this. But I think for what's required is that they used to, anyways, for the first courses, have to leave the practice for 3-4 days. Nowadays, we have all our intro services online. Like, we offer a new client builder, which we rarely do because people don't need new clients these days. They're overwhelmed. But what they do need, they need efficiency in an online power team builder course. That's what I'm delivering tomorrow for 4 hours. And then the third course that's done really, really well for us is called the Practice Profit Builder, which is the mini chief financial officer training course for the owner of a veterinary practice. Because we don't get any training, do we, Ivan, in terms of veterinary school? We don't know how to market. We don't know how to run the finances. Mm-hmm. We don't know how to hire and train people. We get nothing. So it's like we're flying
none of that.
Yeah, we don't. We're flying a plane on a wing and a prayer. And so what's super cool is that by the time they get to us, they're usually pretty frustrated, and they're pretty open to getting some help on some proven principles in that. Shawn, I don't know if I answered your question there or not, but.
No, you got it, Joel, exactly. The only thing that you said that was a little bit confusing is that we're all smart, because I would definitely agree that you and me are. But anyways, Ivan, go ahead.
That's right.
Point. Joel, you don't get a point for that as insulting.
I'm losing points.
He's weak trial. He's weak trial to do that. So I really love what you said about us, not having the training, because, I was in my last year, and then we had, I think it was a class for 2 weeks. I think I took it as an elective. So it's one of those rotations that you could take. And it was with John Tate. He impressed me. This guy, he went right into business after school. I think he worked a little bit of veterinary, maybe didn't. I don't remember already. But in 2 weeks, the only conclusion that I could make of his, course on how to run the practice, the conclusion was shit. We don't know nothing about how to run the clinic.
Exactly.
I know how to treat animals, but I have no idea how to run the clinic. So, so I've been observing all these different settings through my career, and I was lucky enough to, go across Canada and work on all these practices, and they're all different. What's interesting that you said is that I think that, and a lot of people will kill me for this, but I think that veterinarians are super resistant to, to a lot of things, but they're kind of lazy. Now, the COVID hit, and we show that our industry is not just resilient, it's anti-fragile. It's one of my favorite books right now by Nicholas Taleb. He's talking about anti-fragility as the property of an organization, not to just survive the event, but actually thrive in it. And we had the New York Times writing about it, that veterinary industry is probably the only one that went up.
I know.
During the COVID times. So I think we can do this. We're just too lazy. Look at the whole telemedicine adoption, like everybody's like, telemedicine me. You had all these chances in the world to do it before. Why wouldn't you do it, in the first place?
They're still not doing it now.
Well, they all bought it. But
but very, very few people are truly adopting it. I know. I agree with you. One of the things I'll consistently find too, there's two ways to look at this. You could look at this as saying, hey, what a cute profession. What a bunch of cute guys, aren't they cute and fuzzy? Or you could say, hey, what a bunch of nice people. And that is that very few of us are into it for the money. And that, most of us, as long as the wolf's, not at the door and there's some money in the bank account, we're pretty happy just to kind of putz along and do what we need to do. And it's very, very difficult to get people motivated sometimes. Like, we'll have some larger practices come through our Practice Profit Builder with, good sizable amounts of cash balances. And the Practice Profit Builder course is about a micromanaging of your expenses and driving income and creating that separation between income and expenses and getting the practice solvent. And it works if you're willing to do it. But when people have got money in the bank, they're kind of like, it's not worth my time.
Not until you try to retire, and then you figure out that your practice isn't worth shit.
I know.
Look at that.
And so that's another kind of practice owner we're getting in, is that they got 5 years before they retire, and they want to evolve the practice so they they can sell it. And so they're motivated. There's got to be motivation. But I'll never forget last year analyzing the EBITDA, the earnings before interest, write-offs and taxes, depreciation, and amortization of a practice, all that kind of stuff that use in assessing practice. When I examined the profit loss of this mixed animal practice in northern USA, they were doing 4.3 million a year, and they had overall profit of 600,000. Okay, you tracking with me? I think it's about 13%. So sales of 4.3, drugs, professional services, everything in there, and overall profit of 600,000. When I took out the sales of the drugs, right, and I took out the profit, the cost of them, and worked out the profit from the drugs alone was 700,000.
Wow.
How is that possible?
Well, it's a poorly run business. That's
right.
Exactly
so what they were doing, they were losing $100,000 on the operations.
That's what I mean. Yeah, exactly.
Crazy. But the thing is, there's still $600,000 leftover money. So I couldn't get them excited about stepping in and doing something about the practice.
That's crazy. So I want to turn it back to what you said about the corporate euthanasia, because this is really interesting. So you have these people that come to you to improve their practice. I get the folks that want to retire, and then that's the bingo. They go through the changes and then they sell, and that's perfect. But what about the guys that come in, they're inspired for a change, they find how to do it with you, and then all of a sudden they get to a certain growth, someone comes in, I'll buy your practice. What happens to these people? Like, are they, because they're just getting momentum, and then all of a sudden, boom, full stop, they're selling their practice, they're becoming an employee. Is it empowering for them, or is it why, which is my kind of concept, is it why we're seeing all the burnout? Because people are going through this experience and it just stops them from being empowered at work?
You're spot on there. It's not empowering. It's disenabling. And whereas our program will empower them, and if they're not super old, then they kind of go, hey, I really love running my practice or my 5 locations. I really love running it. I don't need somebody to come in. I don't hate running my practice anymore because I'm only working 15, 20 hours as a DVM, and I've got money in the bank. I'm having the joy of running 5 locations. One of them's doing not very good, others doing great, and knowing what to do. So I would say probably one of the things at the end of our program is that there's this pride of ownership that they know what they're doing. And unless they're 65 or 70, there's no need to sell. And Ivan, I remember we talked about your company back whenever that was. Where the heck was that? Washington, I think, wasn't it?
I think so. Yeah. We had a great dinner. I remember it was a great dinner.
We did.
It was Washington. Yes.
It was Washington.
Yes.
We had that great soul dinner with that great fish that, that arrived at the table. Yeah. So, and we talked about your program, and it makes sense. But our problem is that we excite the inner entrepreneur. We light them up. We ignite the inner entrepreneur.
So Joel, one of the things that I am really curious to understand, when I look at the work that you do, and we've known each other for years now, it's amazing how 5 years has gone by. I look at your program and the training that you do with the veterinarians that join, the practice owners that join, as allowing them to cut the bullshit. And how do you do that? Like, what's the magic? They come in with all of this noise. Any entrepreneur that's listening to this podcast knows how noisy it can be running a company, and how isolating it can be. All of a sudden you're a veterinarian, and then you're a business owner, and you're the director of HR, and maybe you're the janitor too. How do you help them cut through the bullshit and start making money?
I think the thing is, Shawn, on that is creating the structure of the practice with an expandable model. Okay? They can't do it all themselves. Yeah, I remember years back now, I shot a Whiteboard Wednesday, YouTube video blog called the clogged toilet method of management. And that is where, visually all the shit rises up to you, the single owner in midst, midst of all this stuff. And you go, this sucks. You guys probably remember the story. I'm in the middle of some big 80-pound fat lab spay, and the bank manager's on the phone saying to put some money in the account. Like, what do you know about how do you deal with that? Trust me, that's stress. You're 32 years of age and got that going on. Anyways, so if we can show people how to put a structure in place with a management strata, so where the owner is at the top is the CEO, and then 3 directors down below, like the 3 legs of a stool for stability. So you got your admin director, your VP of admin, you got your medical operation, your VP of medical operations, and then you got your VP of marketing and PR, which is out there, creating goodwill in the community, turning up the spotlight on the practice. So if you can work, and here's another law, right? Any group that gets above 5 or maximally 6 people becomes unwieldingly difficult to work with. So the basic concept of organization is boxes within boxes within boxes. And in the end, you as an owner, not as a veterinarian, but as an owner, you're working with those 3 people and they're trained what to do down below them. And with that, you can expand from 3 to 30,000 people. You take HTC phone company in Taiwan, they use the same system.
Yeah, it's incredible. And Ivan exposed me to Traction, which is another business
Yeah.
operating system. And it's amazing when you take a system that's proven and you just implement it and just work it. It's unbelievable what happens.
Even to Sean's company.
Well, the one thing which is very interesting, and anybody that knows me is going to laugh at this, is that I have to stay out of the kitchen, right? Once this thing is up and running, it's really easy as the president to walk in there and start talking to people and giving them things to do. Before I know it, I've shot myself in the foot because they're taking orders from the wrong guy. It's the self-discipline of a good executive is use the people below you, use the next layer down below you, and don't bypass that layer unless they're doing a bad job, right? Unless they're screwing it up.
That's so interesting. I never drew the direct analogy because what we're doing right now in my new gig, that's exactly what we're doing, but at consolidator level. That's, the management, the layers, you structure the layers and then you pierce the metrics throughout the organization and then you have a running mechanism. And the more we see consolidators, the more we understand that there's no structured mechanism to do that. So it's interesting how you would if to take your strategy and lift it to the corporate level, it's
yeah. Well, it's a model that's being used with hundreds of thousands of businesses, all the way from I don't know, Taylor guitars and gosh, Cisco's used bits of it, Microsoft and so forth, but it's being used super successfully with hundreds of thousands of businesses. So you're right. I don't know if it's the only model, but it sure makes sense to me. It's basically runs on the kind of basic model is 7 divisions, not unlike the 7 systems of a mammalian body, right? So when a dog walks in, it's got roughly 7 systems: a musculoskeletal system, a pulmonary system, a neurological system, etc. And what we're doing in the exam room with the metrics that we are pulling out either from our physical exam or from blood or x-rays is that we're establishing, which one of those 7 systems is working or not. And that's what we're addressing. And that's the same approach with a 7 division model of a practice. Practices wouldn't be in business if there weren't some systems working. But the fact that the owner is stressed and so forth means that there's others that aren't. It's that, and 6 of those 7 are kind of like the 6 cylinders of a flat 6 Porsche engine, right?
So here's the question for you, pop quiz on those systems. Because you're a king of metrics, because that's how you diagnose things. They're up or down. Can you name one metric per system that you love?
Yeah, well, the first one that I really, really love is new clients coming into what we call Division 6. That's the new client, the business development system. And that's a brand new start. That's a brand new person. And if you remember from the AHA study of 2014 in Nashville, on surveying over 500 practices, they found that a good practice, that worked cases up and so forth, that one patient, a 12-year-old dog would bring in upwards of $13,600. Yep. So what I do is I get our clients to tape with a colored 3M sticky note $13,600 onto that phone. So if there's a new client that's calling, you pay attention to them. In fact, if you're really smart, you'll play your practice like a basketball game, and that is you're going to get that ball to the point guard or whoever that is that's got the best scoring stats. And in a practice, you're going to get that incoming new client phone call, that shopper, over to that staff member that's got the best conversion stats of getting him into the exam room. That's how tight you can start running this stuff. If you've got 3 receptionists and one books 85% of her calls, the other one 66, and the other one 32. This is a true story. And the 32% book has been there for 16 years and wants a raise all the time. Who do you want to give a raise, and who do you want to answer that phone and then route that call, over to your point guard? You're going to send it to the 85% dunker, right? So that's probably one of my favorite metrics because it's just so healthy. In a practice, generally we're saying that, if you look at a practice, you need about 1,000 square feet for every DVM. So I was talking earlier today with a practice that's 2,300 square feet. That's about a 2.5 doctor practice. So you need to fill that practice up for 2.5 doctors, or your EBITDA is going to be screwed up from high facility costs, and you're going to need 30 new clients a month for each doctor. So 2.5 times 30 is what, 75, something like that. So your target metric would be 75 new clients a month.
That's incredible. And I know you've got such a wealth of information, Joel. I think, anything that's measured improves. I think we all know that. And I think there's a lot of people that are probably listening to the podcast that are wondering, hey, wow, this sounds really interesting. How do I get some more information? So how do they get more information, Joel Parker?
There's a bunch of different ways. We're all over social media. I'm on LinkedIn. We have a weekly running webinar series that's free called the Champion Private Practice Ownership Series. And those 3 webinars are the secret to finding really good DVMs. The other one is called What the Heck is EBITDA, so you can understand financial statements. And then the third one is the secret to setting fees that are appropriate to your area to get them in the Goldilocks zone. So anybody that's a practice owner or a future practice owner, they can come in for free on those webinars. Those are all over our website, veterinarypracticesolutions.com. And then on top of that, we've got all the Whiteboard Wednesdays. There's something like 250 or 300 videos on there now.
Yeah, so if you want to get all riled up, go check out Whiteboard Wednesdays. It'll be fun. Joel, we like to wrap up our shows every time we record, and man, we're out of time way too quick.
But we did record.
Yeah, we did record, so we're making progress.
Mine's recording. We've got 2 minutes to go, right?
After 80 episodes. No, we were supposed to be done at the 20-minute mark. But anyways, a book, a TED Talk, something that inspired you along your journey to be this dynamic entrepreneur and the leader of this really cool company. What would you recommend to our listeners?
I think the first book I ever read was a book by a guy named Dan Kennedy that was called The Ultimate No BS, Take No Prisoners Business Success Book. And it was awesome. And then I think I read some Michael Gerber and all that kind of stuff. And what I found the problem with those books, there were a lot of great ideas, but I couldn't implement. And that's where I eventually bumped into the system we use called the Hubbard Management System. Eventually bumped into that. And here was this implementation system of metrics and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, but those books were good. Also, I read Guerilla Marketing, which was really great as well.
Yeah.
And it's still good principles. I think it was I forget what his name, Conrad Levinson or whatever his name was, but all good books like that. But ultimately, we want a system that's got some teeth in it. There's no shortage of good ideas in this world. You guys would agree with that, wouldn't you?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. And then the last question we have for all of our guests, Ivan, why don't you throw it at him?
Yeah. So do you know anybody that you think our listeners would enjoy interviewing like yourself? Probably not as good, but...
Like a B version of yourself.
Follow that. Follow
that. Yeah, well, you always listen to your own self, Well, you've already interviewed Stacy Santee, my wonderful friend with Vet to Pet.
She was great on the show, yeah.
Yeah, and what about Joseph Corey with Petriage? Have you interviewed Joseph or Wendy with that team? Yeah,
no,
super cool company about frontline stuff, taking the load off the front line with this very smart AI, artificial intelligence kind of software that clients can use to determine whether or not it needs to trigger a real live visit. So that's probably where I'd get a hold of Joseph Corey with Petriage.
Thank you so much for listening to the Veterinary Innovation Podcast. If you want to hear about our new episodes, please follow us on any social media channel. Also, you can check out our website at veterinaryinnovationpodcast.com. See you next week.